talk about the other ways in which that budget is also going to negatively impact people. YouTube, we had a little situation, so I had to rejoin. But the budget is not just about cuts to Medicaid, although it is going to, and the budget I'm talking about, for those of you who got to catch up a little bit, the budget that we're talking about is the Republican budget that was just released. This is a budget that basically is going to allow them to hold on to and to maintain the permanency of those $1.9 trillion in tax cuts. They're actually expanding the tax cuts. But today we're going to have a slightly different conversation about what else is in the budget, because it's not just those numbers. Before we get started, I want to just say congratulations to, what is his name? Mayor John Ewing Jr. out of the great state of Nebraska. This man flipped an entire district in Nebraska that had been held by a Republican for, I believe, 3 or 4 mayoral terms. He came in yesterday and won, not by a little, but like almost 10 percentage points, was leading by over 11,000 votes, flipped the seat from Republican to Democrat. And then I looked, and he's melanated. He's from the community. He's from the people, the global majority. So shout out to Mayor John Ewing Jr. This is obviously not indicative of where the entire nation is, but when you can flip a seat at this time in what is considered a very off-year election from a seat that was held by a Republican for the past 3 or 4 terms, and you can flip it, and it's a shift in the mood and the atmosphere, and that's something that we should think about a lot. So shout out to him. Wanted to congratulate him for that. Also, we have, for those of you who want to make suggestions on guests we should bring on the Lurie Daniel Favorite Show, we have a new email address for you to use, because y'all be sending me emails. I got 11 different emails. Some of y'all find all 11 of them. I'm not responding to those emails because I don't even check those email accounts. But if you have a suggestion for the Lurie Daniel Favorite Show in terms of a guest, please send that email suggestion to ldfshow@SiriusXM.com. That's ldfshow@SiriusXM.com. Amina and Jonah will be checking that account. And if it's a guest that we think is in alignment with what it is that we're trying to do, we will definitely reach out to them and bring them on. But you can't just say their name. You got to say their name and give us their contact information, because we already looking and scouring the world for amazing guests. So what we can't do is just, you should get John Smith. Chad, it's 5011 John Smith. So we're going to need some contact information and some context as to why you think they would be a good guest. But that email address again is ldfshow@SiriusXM.com. Let's get into the conversation today. I don't know how many of y'all are following Michael Harriot. You should be following Michael Harriot. You should be reading Michael Harriot's Substack, Contraband Camp. I know Substack is a controversial situation for a lot of people. We're not getting into that right now. But Contraband Camp is a space where some of the most amazing writing is happening right now from people who understand and who are part of our community. And so I just want to say shout out to them, because the article that they put up this week is going to really form the basis of our conversation today. And that article is called "A Wish List for White Supremacy: 10 Ways That Trump's Budget Will Hurt Black America." Again, this is not just about Medicaid, although your grandma and your mam and your pap and your mima, all of them going to be implicated. Their benefit and their social safety net, if this vote goes through, and if they vote yes, and if the Democrats, together with a couple of Republicans who are willing to see the forest for the trees, do not vote no and block it, they are going to definitely have cuts to their health care. We talked about that yesterday. We'll do some more throughout this week. But the other components of the budget also matter a lot. And this article that Michael Harriot put out really explains it in some powerful ways. So I'm going to share with you directly from the article, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. And one of the reasons this matters a lot is because some of you may be aware that 106,000 Black women lost their jobs last month. Of all the job losses that there were last month, Black women, who are the most degreed and the most qualified on paper for any position that we apply for, I'm just going to say that, 106,000 job losses. And so we are in a moment right now where our ability to use our education, our ability to use our resources and our contacts to find economic and employment success in traditional, and I'm saying traditional with air quotes, in traditional white spaces, that period is over. That period is over. A lot of us define success by being able to go to school, learning how to change our voice appropriately so that we could interview well, and then do well enough that we were going to get a good job offer, make good white money, and then possibly move out of the hood so that we could go move into a white neighborhood where our neighbors didn't really want us to be there in the first place. The reason that matters is because that was the model for success. That was the model for success that we have employed ever since we moved into an era of integration, where we collectively, for, some can argue with the reasons, but collectively we made some decisions that said we were going to tie our economic sustainability and success to being able to access white communities and white businesses and white jobs. And I know it was a little more complicated than that, because we didn't have enough necessary infrastructure to house all of the Black employed or employable people in our own communities. But we also, by having a brain drain and having so many of our college students go into college colleges and then never bring that college back home and build up the infrastructure because it was easier to go get a job for an established company that was already owned by white people than it was to bring that college home and create an institution where we could work and employ ourselves. And I'm including myself in that. So I'm not excluding myself from that. I'm just saying that pathway to financial success and sustainability is over. It's over. And so what we didn't do before, we're going to have to do now, because I got an 18-year-old finna graduate. My 18-year-old finna graduate. He going into college. Shout out to my baby. We love you. Mom and daddy love you. But after college, he is not going to have the same sort of opportunities that his father and I had, because those pathways are closed. And so we are going to have to recreate the infrastructure that is necessary for us to hire our own, because ain't nobody else gonna hire them, because now they no longer have to. They haven't officially gotten rid of the Civil Rights Act, but that is coming. So I want to go through this article. Michael Harriot begins as follows. Black startup corporations, black startup companies, they get less than 1% of all the venture capital funding, which is why it was so crazy for white Christian nationalists who obviously have limp dick syndrome and are really feeling quite inadequate in and of themselves. Why would you sue the Fearless Fund, which was addressing the fact that black startups receive less than 1% of venture capital funding? These black women decided to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and fund themselves. But white men were so intimidated by that they had to file a lawsuit. Who do you think you are, helping each other, not letting me and my whiteness come and participate? That's basically how they operate. They're perpetual tantrum holders and throwers. Not all of y'all, but the non-righteous whites, y'all got some issues. According to the Census Bureau, he says black-owned businesses are denied credit at 2 times the rate of white-owned businesses. They pay higher interest rates when approved. And when white business owners are 3 times more likely to be fully approved for a loan than a black applicant, here's the part that really hurt my heart. Even when the black applicant has a greater business income, more years in operation, more money in the bank, and a higher credit score. When we are better than you at every single metric, your whiteness will not allow you to tolerate it. And we are often better than you at every single metric because we have to be, Ken, because you created a system where if we weren't better than you at every single metric, you would not even see us. And so that's the reality of how difficult it is for black people to make it financially in this country. In order to address these issues, Michael Harriot goes on. He says, quote, the Biden-Harris administration, their budget included permanent funding for the Minority Business Development Agency. And even though Congress had appropriated year-to-year funding since 1970, the Jobs and Infrastructure Act under Biden, under Harris, that black woman who some of y'all cousins said wasn't black enough, they and their non-black enough bodies decide. That's not what Michael Harriot said. That's me adding content because you know that's how I do. And they're non-black enough bodies. Joseph Robinette Biden and Kamala Devi Harris basically created a permanent government agency. That Jobs and Infrastructure Act made the MDBA a permanent government agency within the Department of Commerce. Michael Harriot says that this agency was tasked with the following things: strengthening black-owned businesses. They didn't give out money, but they collaborated with the U.S. Small Business Administration, black communities, banks, HBCUs, and black civics organizations to eliminate the funding inequities. This is what that administration was doing, but a lot of y'all said they wasn't black enough for you, and she wasn't black enough, and you thought that this white orange man was going to give you something better, some better option. I don't know, but this is where we're at right now. And Michael Harriot says, by 2023, the number of SBA loans that went to black-owned businesses more than doubled, reaching an all-time high. Under the administration of Joseph Sleepy Joe Biden and Kamala, she's not black enough Harris. That's what they were doing while people were online talking about Genocide Joe. I didn't see nobody say Genocide Trump. Do people even say Genocide Trump? I don't see it. I'm just saying it is what it is. Michael Harriot says Donald Trump wants to make these disparities great again. Not only does his discretionary budget include a 33.2% reduction in small business administration, Harriot says, it also asks legislators to totally eliminate that agency, the MBDA, and its lengthy history of inserting equity and other DEI practices into its program. Basically, Donald Trump was like, this previous administration was too pro-black. They were doing too many things for the black people. We want the disparities back because that's what makes America great. Harriet goes on to talk in depth about the various ways that this Trump budget is going to specifically target Black Americans. So we're going to go through some of them now. Highly recommend that you get a subscription to Contraband Cap. It is amazing writing, amazing content, but here are just a few of them. Number one way that Trump's budget is going to target Black Americans: Black school kids and college students, you in the crosshairs, honey. Black children, he says, make up 13% of school-age population. However, 63% of Black kids attend schools where the majority of the students are poor. Only 25% of white kids attend schools where the majority of students are poor. He He says that while majority Black districts get about $2,000 less per student than their white counterparts, if the Department of Ed's Title I program didn't supplement high poverty schools, it would be even worse. So that function that the Department of Education was providing for Black kids and Black schools, it was so huge that it made the already existing disparities far less terrible than they were. According to Harriet, this budget that the Republicans are trying to push and ram down our throats would reduce Title I funding by nearly a quarter of the entire program's budget, $4.5 billion. That would produce tens of thousands of teachers being fired. It would increase education disparities. And this is something that we saw happen after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, when tens of thousands of educators, Black educators, were completely let go from the education system because white Americans did not want to have their children educated with our kids. And so they shut down those schools. And basically, they would not send white children to be educated by Black children. So tens of thousands, nearly 40% of the Black teaching workforce was let go. Nearly 80-90% of the superintendents and the principals who were Black were let go, never to be seen in the education industry again. According to the report, this would increase this would cut fundings for college prep programs, upward bound. It would eliminate continuing education programs for teachers who teach Black students. According to the budget, the classes have to be canceled because it's too much critical race theory, DEI, social justice activism, anti-racism, and instruction on white privilege and white supremacy. White racist people don't like learning about white racism, and so they're cutting that out the budget. He says it doesn't end with K through 12 schools. Black students are more likely to work through college. I was a work-study student. I was a work study student. I had 3 jobs and I sold my plasma and cleaned apartments so I could finish at Penn State University. But he says that Black students are more likely to work through college. According to this budget, they will reduce the federal work study program by $980 billion fucking dollars, which will wipe out $112 million for the community colleges. It's going to wipe out the programs that fund grants and fellowships for underserved students who are seeking advanced degrees. And it does a whole lot more than that. And he continues to discuss the many ways that we are essentially going to see the eradication and the end of our community's ability to provide for themselves and to provide for their needs. Now, he goes on beyond that, and he spends a lot of time talking about the variety of ways that, frankly, we are going to be struggling, not just in this immediacy, but in the long term. And so what is it that we say every single time that we talk about these topics? We have work to do. We need you to call your elected officials. You've got 1 congressperson, you've got 2 senators. You need to call them. Somebody said yesterday they got on the 5 Calls app. And on the 5 Calls app, the call didn't go through. And I was like, so did you stop there? You can look up your elected officials' contact information on the Googles, on the machines. You can do that very thing. And so when you're thinking about the many ways in which we are already struggling, we have to organize civically and get engaged. The next item that he mentions is that they're going to create a White Wish Foundation. Not literally, but kind of. Donald Trump also plans to provide $1 billion for investment in Mars-focused programs. I told y'all, these white folks, these billionaires, they want to go to Mars. They're leaving this planet. They want to go to Mars. And so they're going to include $1 billion in investments to help the whites go to Mars. Okay, maybe you can get a ride on that shit. Maybe if you clean it, they'll let you come in, but whatever. Basically, he goes on to say, number 3, if it's Black, it's gone. Instead of explaining why he reduced funding in some areas, the budget simply cuts them as DEI, woke, or too gay. The things that are too DEI, woke, or too gay are the USAID program. It strips $2.5 billion to eliminate non-essential staff that were hired because of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Equity assistance centers, gone. Preschool development grants, gone. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Agency, gone. Senior Community Service Employment Program, gone. DOJ, Department of Justice, gone-ish. Really led by Stephen Miller and fronted and cosplayed by Pam Bondi, who pretends like she's in charge of the Department of Justice. It's Stephen Miller. Pam Bondi is just there to be the bombshell. But basically, they're going to provide a $2 billion cut to the Justice Department, specifically for the community-based grants that were supposed to eliminate police corruption. The National Center for Restorative Justice, gone. Organizations that address mass incarceration and funding for researchers to counter hate crimes, gone. $468 million from the ATF to prevent the agency from investigating white boys who 3D print their guns. That's a direct quote. I didn't say that. That's a direct quote. And gun shops that break federal laws. So all of the agencies that were put in place to minimize gun violence, gone. Environmental injustice for Black people. 63% of Black people, says Michael Harriet, say that the safety of their community's drinking water is a moderate problem. Only 33% of white Americans say the same. An AP poll found that 54% of white people are significantly more likely than Blacks to be very confident that their water being safe. Meaning the white man's ice isn't colder, but the white man's water is cleaner because white people determine which water gets clean, when, and how. It's weird, but it's true. And so that money is going to be gone. $2.5 billion in loans for cities that were trying to update their water infrastructure, gone. The EPA's environmental justice program is going to lose $100 million, and an additional $254 million that was going to clean up hazardous waste sites, gone. Fuck them kids. That's a quote. I didn't say that, although I have been known to say fuck them kids occasionally, but he said it right here. It's in the article. Fuck them kids. Aside from K through 12 and college education, the budget also eliminates $47 million in child care subsidies, $2 billion in refugee and unaccompanied alien children programs, $315 million in preschool development grants, $1 billion for substance abuse and mental health services. White people gonna get paid. That's the other thing. They said it's not just a boon for billionaires. He's also going to be, in addition to breaking those cuts, he's going to be funneling money to white communities in a way that makes it seem like it's not racist. Basically, he is dedicating, according to the report, $100 million to, quote, provide access to affordable financing and spur economic development in disproportionately white rural America. White Americans are going to get another affirmative action program. That's how this happens. Number 8, the colored sections. You got to read the article. Michael, he's so good. He's so good. Basically, he continues to talk about the fact that there are congressionally funded regional commissions for underserved communities, like Native Americans, like folks who live in Appalachia. That money gone. They saving $3 billion by eliminating all the small agencies, which include the 400 Years of African American History Commission, the Institute of Museum of Library Sciences, Museum for Meals program. All that money is gone. It's gone, gone, gone. Why? Because elongated muskrat needs the money. Jeff Bezos needs the money. Don't you want to get, your child don't need preschool. Your child don't need Head Start. Jeff Bezos, you don't need it more than Jeff Bezos needs to send another penis-shaped rocket into space. You sure don't. Moving on, it also increases the wealth gap because it is going to prevent all of the programs that were designed to increase Black home ownership, which is one of the key courses or key reasons why we do not have the equity financially that we need in terms of parity with our white counterparts. And it goes on and on and on. This is about Medicaid. This is about social safety nets, but it is also specifically about harming Black and brown communities. Someone said, where can I get the article? Contrabandcamp.com is where you should go. You will need to be a subscriber in order to read the entire article because writing and researching this stuff, that ain't free. But Michael Harriot is really good at breaking this down in ways that are important. And so this is what I need. This is what you need. This is what we need. Call your elected officials. Call your senators. Call your congressmen. Call your mama, your aunties, your uncles, your daddy, and everybody else and tell them to do the same thing. Send them the number and call, email, text, and do whatever it is that you got to do. And while we're at it, figure out what it's going to look like to recreate Black infrastructure for employment and to fund every single need that we have that does not in any way, shape, or form rely on white people, like our ancestors did. And since some of y'all like to say, I'm not my ancestors, you might want to revisit that because you're going to need to figure out how your ancestors did this because we've had to do this before. Now, we ain't did it before, but our ancestors certainly have. We got to go to commercial break and we will be right back after this.